Okay, so as we are starting to move more and more towards blended curricula, it's becoming increasingly apparent that we really need to record a lot of our presentations. Students really need the option available to them to watch a pre-recorded presentation or learning activity from the comfort of their own home or their dorm room or somewhere off-site. This will really help with social distancing and with us to be able to effectively deliver our content to students anywhere where it's possible for them to view it. And as we look at the different ways that we can do this, we can see that there's a number of options available to us. Now, this video is going to look at how we use PowerPoint presentations and convert those into an MP4 file format. So the only software that we're really going to look at today is Microsoft PowerPoint and how we can convert those existing presentations we have to an MP4. There are lots of other programs available which are less straightforward to use but offer more advantages. An example of that is OBS software. As you can see here, I'm using the 64-bit Windows variant in order to demonstrate this video. And the advantage of this software is that it can show us how to run different programs on a computer screen, as it can effectively capture your entire video screen. And for this reason, I'm using it to demonstrate how to use PowerPoint, as it won't just show me the slides, but also all the controls around it. So with all that put aside, let's access a simple PowerPoint presentation I've prepared for this video, and we'll go through how to convert it from basic slides to a PowerPoint presentation with an audio recording, and ultimately how we're going to export that as a MP4 media file. The reason why we're going to look at MP4 files is that these can be used both for uploading to YouTube, as we've done with this video, or using different platforms that are intended for students. So for example, on Blackboard Ultra, an MP4 file will be perfect for UJA, which we will cover in another video. So if we look down here, we can see we've got some folders, and the one I'm going to look at here is a staff training folder. And you can see here there are a number of different things in this folder, but what we're interested in is this presentation, which we're going to open now. As we open this presentation, we can see that it's a very short presentation, which will give us ample opportunity to discuss the features. So when we're looking to record a PowerPoint presentation, we're going to look at this upper gray toolbar that we're all familiar with. And the tab we're looking for is the slideshow tab. When you click on the slideshow tab, we get all these features, some of which any seasoned PowerPoint user will be fairly rehearsed in, and we'll see some that you maybe use less often. So the one that we're going to focus on here is this Record Show tab. And when we look at this Record Show tab, there's a little drop down arrow, and that's what we're going to click. And what this shows us is two different options. We can record from the current slide, or we can record from the beginning of the presentation. Now, most of us will tend to want to record from the beginning of the presentation, as that will give us the whole presentation in one go, but we could also choose to record from the current slide if we so choose. Sometimes we're doing that if there's only part of the presentation that we want to make into a video. We'll talk about that at the end of this section. So let's record from the current slide. And when we click on this, you're going to get a screen that you're maybe less familiar with. I'm assuming you're less familiar with this if you're watching a video on how to do this, with a lot of controls, which are all very intuitive and very similar to what you would use in other applications. So starting from the top left, you've got a basic record button. When we start recording, that will then become the pause button. We've got stop and replay if you want to hear our recordings. If you've got any notes on your presentation, you can click on this to show them. And then we have an X over here, which will clear existing recordings. And we will get to that a little bit later on because there's a few parts of that that I think are very important to look at. We have a settings tab as well, which allows us to select a microphone and a camera for recording. This is particularly useful if you have a number of different mics or cam feeds on your computer, as is the case when you've got several webcams for different functions. Simple controls, going back a slide, going forwards, and then some quite nice ones down here that are very easy to use. We have a pen, which we can select, and then select the color of that pen and use it to draw a diagram or highlight part of an image, etc. But we also have the function to highlight, again choosing the color, and we can use this to highlight text or something that we're keen on. And as is usually the case, there's an eraser tool as well. So if we click on the eraser tool, it'll remove the objects that we've drawn. Finally, we have the microphone on here, which is why students will hear a presentation. And it's crucial that you have your microphone turned on if you're giving a PowerPoint voiceover. There are some situations where you want to just go through a presentation and record it without a voiceover, in which case you would X that out. And there's also the option to add your own video into it if you want a thumbnail of yourself in the corner, for example, discussing the video. I've got that disabled for this recording, but it's something you can use. So now that we've moved that out of the way, the other controls that I find quite useful on this are when we right-click on the slide. And when we right-click, we can see that there's a tab down here for pointer options. Now, some people prefer the classic white arrow, but if we have a white background, I find the white arrow is less easy to see. We can choose different options here, and the one that I tend to choose is the laser pointer. When I use that, we can see a very visible indicator of something that we're looking at on the screen. However, it is quite a bright color, and it may not be what you want for your presentation aesthetic. So now that we've got all those basic controls out of the way, we're going to record this presentation. When we click record, we'll get a countdown to go into the recording. And once that countdown has finished, the presentation is recording. So everything we're doing now is being recorded on this presentation. We can see down here that we've got the amount of time that we've been recording on this particular slide. We can see the number of slides, and we can see the total length of the recording. And as we continue this, what you will notice is when we go to slide 2, the total recording time is still continuing, but our slide count gets reset for each slide. And then we can present this the way that we would normally do it. We can talk about, here is a tooth. We can show dentinal tubules, whether your odontoblasts are migrating. We can show that leads to reactionary denting. We can show that it shrinks the pulp chamber and shrinks it again, and we've got this narrowing going on. Now, let's say for one reason or another, you wanted to take a break at this point. You needed a glass of water, or you needed to get up or take a phone call or something. You can click pause and then restart your recording. We get no countdown, it's just an immediate restart. Now, once again, I've paused it. What if I've made a mistake on this slide? What if this was a longer presentation, say 50 slides, and we were on slide 37 of 50, and we decided, no, I've said something wrong there, I don't want to say that, or I've gotten a fit of hiccups during the slide. Do I need to delete the whole recording, or what can I do? Well, the answer to that is, it depends on what you need to do. You can just clear the recording on one slide, or you can clear the entire recording. In this case, we're not going to be so drastic. We're going to clear the recording on one slide. So when you go over here, let's go back to this clear existing recording section. And when we click on that, you're going to see that under clearing recordings, we have clear recordings on the current slide and clear recordings on all slides. We've decided we want to clear the 23-second recording from this slide, but keep the rest of the recording and then re-record this. But you may notice that these are not things we can click on. In order to clear a recording, we need to actually stop the recording. And now that we've stopped it, we can go over here and you'll see we can now click on either of these two. And I'm going to click on the recording on my current slide. And what you'll see here is as I click on that, this little recording thing will go away. And you can see that the total time has been reduced and the time on this slide has been reset. Now, when I start to record again, it will count me back in and then I'll be able to start recording again. As you can see, we're starting again. We're going to go through the end of this presentation. We're seeing the pulp chamber is getting smaller, which is okay as long as the pulp retains vitality. At this stage, it's getting a bit hairy. You'd hate to want to have to go in and carry out an endodontic procedure on that. So hopefully it retains its vitality and then we get total obliteration. We're at the end of our presentation, which is slides 9 of 9. So we click this and it takes us to the end of show. And when we click this, we can exit. So what we now have is a PowerPoint and we're happy with the recording we have in it. We can see that this is now slightly different to when we started, and it becomes more apparent when we look at these darker slides that you can see a recording symbol at the base here. And this shows us that there's a recording attributed to that slide. We can choose to play the recording on those slides and we can enter the show at any stage. So let's say you wanted to re-record and insert a new slide in here. You could insert a new slide in here and then start your recording. And that might be a situation where you go to slideshow and you record from the current slide. So we're done with the recordings. But are we done with what we have to do here to make this into an MP4? And the answer to that is not quite. There's still a few things we need to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into File. And in File, we're going to look first at the Info tab. Now, when we click on this Info tab, we've got all the usual things you find in the Information tab. We can choose to protect our presentation. We can check it for issues. We can inspect it. We can do all that. But there's now a new tab, and that is the Compress Media button. This is important, particularly with large presentations, as they can be quite sizable. This is a very short presentation, small images. It's all quite basic. It's only 1.6 megabytes. Realistically, this is a small enough size, but we're going to look at the different options available to us. We could keep it at high resolution, which is particularly useful if we're looking at finer details in a presentation. We could go to a classic 720p, which is okay for text, or we could go to a slightly lower resolution of 480, which would allow us to rapidly upload a much smaller file. In this case, let's go to 720. It probably won't change the presentation size much and see what happens. And as it's compressing, we're seeing it's going through each of the different slides. And it's going along. And you can see how this would maybe take a little bit longer if we had a very long presentation. So patience is useful. And we can see here that we've saved nothing by compressing it because realistically we weren't going to in this presentation anyway. So I'm going to close that now. We've got our compressed file. I'm now going to save a copy of this file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as a different type of thing. So normally when you save a file, it's down as a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to choose the location for this. I'm going to choose my PC. And I'm going to browse. And I'm going to go to staff training folder. And I'm going to call it how to make a PowerPoint video. And then we're going to change what we save it as. So rather than PowerPoint presentation, we've got two very good options for us. We could save it as a PowerPoint show, which will allow us to send it as a file and students can play it and they'll view it as a PowerPoint show. Or in this case, we're going to save it as an MP4 file. And the reason why we're going to save it as that is that we can use this very easily on our UJ platform or on YouTube, which means that the students can stream it and use it as a video. So we're going to save it as that. And we're going to click Save. Now, even though this is a short recording, it still takes a while to process it as an MP4. And so once again, a bit of patience is useful. What I would say is this is a good time for us to talk about something else, which is we may want to redesign the way that we're delivering this particular presentation. If a student is to watch this as a video themselves at home, it may not be the best idea to record a 90-minute session. You may well have gotten perfect student engagement with a highly interactive 90-minute educational session live where they're interacting with you and engaging with you. But in a situation like this, it may be worth considering, can I break my longer presentation into smaller 20-minute bite-sized chunks? And if I can do that, I can maybe make them into a playlist. An example of this can be seen on our YouTube channel, where we took a reasonably long video of how to do a trauma table and broke it into 10 discrete videos, but then put them all within a playlist. So a student could choose to play through them all or play individual parts. And that may help to hold attention spans and get better student engagement. We can see our file's nearly ready. And what we'll do now is we'll wait for it to save fully. And we're going to save it to a different location in this case. We'll save it here as video 3. It may be that I've done this a few times and it doesn't let me do it. So that is now saved. What we'll do is we'll minimize out of this presentation. We'll open our staff training folder again, and we should see that we have video 3 here. So we're going to open video 3, and what you will see is a reasonably good quality PowerPoint presentation will play. Is being recorded on this particular slide. We can see the number of slides and continuing. Now that you have this recording, you can choose to do whatever you want with it. You can put it onto YouTube or UJ or whatever other streaming platform you want to use. At some point, we'll do a video on how to use OBS, which is a little bit trickier, but does have a few fancy tricks up its sleeve.